Welcome to Political Perspectives with the Washington Examiner. I'm Jim Antle. Hugo Gurdon will be back next week, and I'm joined today by Chief Political Correspondent Byron York. Byron, the Democratic National Convention's launched. A lot of the suspicion and suspense has been taken out of it. What have your takeaways been so far from this extended TV commercial for the Harris-Walz ticket?
Well, I think if you're a Democrat, Democratic strategist, you got to be pretty happy. So far, it appears to have been a very successful, we're talking halfway through it right now, pretty successful gathering. The first thing they had to do was quickly shuffle Joe Biden off the stage, and they did it on Monday night. And not without one final indignity for the president. They have muscled out of his job, making him wait till almost midnight to talk.
Right.
And then he comes out and gives a speech. And I think it was kind of like the State of the Union. If you remember, before the State of the Union, there'd been all this speculation about whether Biden was too old and infirm for the job when he obviously was.
Right.
There'd been this speculation, and Biden's solution to the problem was to kind of shout his State of the Union address to show how vigorous he was, and he kind of did the same thing in Chicago. And the problem is when you do that, you look and you're Joe Biden, you look kind of like an old man shouting. And so, but anyway, he flew off to California that very night, so he's gone. And I believe on night two, with the Obama night, there were very, very few references to the sitting president, Joe Biden, and they were made by Barack Obama, who had made Biden, of course, his vice president. So he's gone. He's just out of it. So I think they've successfully done that. And now they're going to successfully, I feel, roll out the Walz-Harris ticket, meaning Walz comes first, and then Harris is the last night. And then I think they really introduced with the Obamas a lot of attack lines on Donald Trump that you're going to see. No surprises at all. The entire lawfare campaign, the lawsuits, the indictments were all designed to give material, to provide material for this moment. So you'll hear a lot of people saying he's a sexual abuser and he's a fraudster and he's been convicted of 34 felony counts, and all of that stuff is paying off for Democrats now.
So there was an interesting moment when former President Barack Obama spoke where he sort of made fun of Trump's obsession with crowd sizes. And it seemed to be a little bit of a departure from the when they go low, we go high themes of the past. We're going to play that clip now.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
So is that the new civil tone of the former president?
Well, that's not actually going high. I think we can say that. Trump would probably be happy that he called him a billionaire. He really gets upset with people who say he doesn't have as much money as he says he does. The whole crowd size thing, Obama's kind of hand gesture made some observers think maybe he was talking about something else, certainly not going high. But I think that this theme of ridicule is going to go through the Democratic campaign. You saw it start immediately with the big switcheroo with Joe Biden when Tim Walz, even before he was picked for vice president, began referring to J.D. Vance and the whole ticket as weird. And the whole weird thing really picked up for a while. And all of the Democrats and all of their advocates and allies in the press began calling Vance, Trump, and maybe all Republicans weird. So I think that they've really felt that ridicule would be a profitable strategy for them, and it will be. So it's been a profitable strategy for Trump for a long, long time. So I think you're going to get the same thing from the other side.
So Tim Walz has had a number of controversies. A lot of his critics say he has a problem with the truth. You've written about this. We're going to play a clip of one of the latest controversies involving whether he's an accurate narrator of his own life story.
Today's IVF day. Thank God for IVF. My wife and I have two beautiful children. Yeah, first of all, it was up to him. I wouldn't have a family because of IVF and the things that we need to do reproductive. My kids were born through that that way. That includes IVF. And this gets personal for me and my family. When my wife and I decided to have children, we spent years going through infertility treatments. And I remember praying every night for a call for good news. The pit in my stomach when the phone rang, and the agony when we heard that the treatments hadn't worked. So it wasn't by chance that when we welcomed our daughter into the world, we named her Hope.
So that's obviously a very emotional issue, but is that really the whole story?
Well, no, actually, it's not. It's not, in fact, true. That last part, by the way, was from his very first speech when he was rolled out. It was in the Philadelphia area where Kamala Harris had introduced him as her choice for vice president. So the deal is that as you just heard, he has said several times that he and his wife relied on IVF to have a child. Now, that's kind of unremarkable. I mean, a lot of people do that, and it wouldn't be any big deal. Except he was using that. The reason he was talking about it was to attack J.D. Vance. And what had happened was, you remember earlier this year, there was a ruling that was kind of way out there by the Alabama Supreme Court, which basically declared frozen embryos to be persons. And it was thought to be a possible move toward outlawing IVF. And so there's a huge backlash against it. The Alabama legislature overturned the whole thing by legislation, so it's gone. Trump said it was a crazy idea. Republicans didn't support it at all, and so what happened was, as often happens in Washington, Democrats in the Senate came up with a bill like the Save IVF Act or the Protect IVF Act or something like that. It was a messaging bill. And it was designed to protect IVF, which is not under attack and not outlawed or banned or in any state in the country. So it was a messaging bill, and the whole point was to try to embarrass your opponents. So what happened was a bunch of Republicans, including Vance, who supports IVF, said this is a stupid messaging bill. IVF is legal and not banned in any state in the country, so we're not going to vote for this. So now, having voted against this messaging bill, Tim Walz can say, J.D. Vance wants to take away your IVF. And it's just not true. And then what came out after that was that Walz was not telling the truth about the method, the treatment that he and his wife had used to conceive. They had actually not used IVF. They had used another process. And what was really important, there was a huge difference between IVF and the process they used. Now I'm going to quote from the New York Times. Unlike IVF, IUI, which is the process the Walz's used, does not involve creating or discarding embryos. And so anti-abortion leaders are not trying to restrict the treatment. So it appears that Walz just made up the IVF part of the story so he could attack Vance. And now it's been revealed that it wasn't true. So that's one thing. And, a lot of journalists will look at one problematic statement that a candidate makes and say, okay, and they kind of file it away. And then there's another problematic statement. And then they say, well, if there's one more, we've got a pattern here.
Right.
And so the IVF story was after the whole National Guard stuff, and it was after the DUI story, in which when he ran for Congress in 2006, his campaign had lied about a DUI arrest he had in 1995. And kind of what joins all these stories together is the truth would have been fine. telling the precise truth about his DUI arrest, which is now, 1995. It's almost 30 years ago. His DUI arrest, the National Guard issue, and IVF, telling truth about all those would have been fine. In fact, J.D. Vance, after the IVF, said, I don't understand why he's doing this. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a child by IVF or not having a child by IVF. And yet he's made up this story. So I think if the normal campaign rules apply, and maybe they don't, there will be more scrutiny to a lot of the things that Walz has said about his personal biography in the past.
Maybe this is a tribute to Joe Biden.
Well, there were a lot of things that it took Republicans and reporters years to figure out that Biden wasn't telling them the truth. But obviously, there's only 80-something days or 70-something days till Election Day. So if any reporter wants to do a significant amount of fact checking about Walz's record, they probably ought to get on it.
Thank you, Byron, and thank you all for joining Political Perspectives with the Washington Examiner.